The car felt smaller after that. Not physically, nothing about the space had changed, but the air inside it grew dense, heavy with things unsaid. The rain pressed harder against the windows, as if the night itself were trying to listen. I stayed silent, afraid that if I spoke again I might say something I couldn't take back. Or worse, something that would make him stop the car and end whatever this was before it had a chance to fully reveal itself. He drove on, posture rigid, eyes locked on the road. The city thinned around us, buildings giving way to darker stretches of street, fewer lights, more shadows. Every turn he took felt deliberate. Measured. I watched him the way one watches a fire, aware of its warmth, its danger, its hypnotic pull. "You're quiet," he said eventually. "So are you," I replied. A corner of his mouth lifted, faint and fleeting. "Fair." Silence settled again, but it was no longer empty. It vibrated between us, filled with memory trying to surface. My thoughts spiraled despite my attempts to ground myself. I replayed the glance we'd shared at the red light. The way he'd almost said my name. The certainty I'd felt, absurd and unshakable, that he already knew it. I studied the line of his jaw, the familiar tension there. A strange pressure built behind my eyes, like a memory knocking from the inside, begging to be let in. "How long have you been driving?" I asked, partly to break the silence, partly because I needed to hear his voice again. "A while," he said. "That's vague." Another pause. Then, long enough to learn when to listen instead of talk. That answer felt personal in a way I couldn't explain. The car slowed as we approached another light. Red again. Fate, apparently, was in no hurry. "You can tell a lot about people in these moments," he continued quietly. "When everything stops for a second." I swallowed. "Like what?" "Like who looks at their phone to escape." His eyes flicked briefly to the mirror. "And who stays present." I didn't know why that made my chest ache. The light turned green. We moved forward. A few minutes passed before I realized something else was wrong. "We should have hit the main avenue by now," I said carefully. "This doesn't look familiar." He nodded, as if he'd been expecting that. "I know." I straightened, heart picking up speed. "Then why?" "There was an accident," he interrupted gently. "Traffic's backed up for miles. I didn't want you stuck." The reasonable explanation should have calmed me. It didn't. "And you're sure this way is faster?" "Yes." "How do you know?" His grip tightened on the wheel. "Because I've driven it before." Again with the past tense. I glanced out the window. The neighborhood we were passing through felt old, row houses with darkened windows, narrow sidewalks slick with rain. It carried the quiet of places people passed through but didn't linger in. "Do you live around here?" I asked. He hesitated. "I used to." My breath caught. There it was again, that subtle pull, like a thread being tugged. My mind searched desperately now, flipping through faces and places and half-remembered conversations. There was a time in my life I didn't talk about much. A chapter I'd closed quickly, clumsily, because it hurt too much to leave open. A man I hadn't seen in years. A goodbye that hadn't been a goodbye at all. My pulse thudded louder in my ears. "What made you leave?" I asked, my voice softer than before. He didn't answer right away. The wipers dragged across the windshield, back and forth, counting time. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "staying is more dangerous than leaving." The words landed hard. Dangerous. I studied his face, searching for irony, exaggeration. There was none. His expression was somber, sincere. "Dangerous how?" I pressed. He shook his head once. "That's not my story to tell." A strange mix of disappointment and relief washed through me. I didn't know why I'd expected him to open up so easily. Or why I felt entitled to his truth. Still, I couldn't let it go. You talk like you know me, I said quietly. The car slowed again, not for a light this time, but for him. Just a subtle deceleration, as though the words themselves had weight. I know of you, he replied. That was worse. My heart began to race. That doesn't make sense. He exhaled, long and controlled. It will. I stared at his reflection, searching his eyes. When? Soon, he said. The rain softened, thinning into a mist. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows across the road. I felt suspended between two versions of myself, the one who wanted answers no matter the cost, and the one who knew that some truths, once uncovered, could never be buried again. Do you always speak in riddles? I asked, attempting lightness and failing. A soft, almost sad smile touched his lips. Only when I'm afraid. That startled me. Afraid of what? His eyes met mine in the mirror, and this time he didn't look away. Of hurting you. The words echoed through the car, reverberating in my chest. Hurt me? How? We were strangers. We had just met. Haven't we? My breathing grew shallow. Why would you hurt me? He swallowed. I saw his throat move. Because I already have. The world tilted. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, heart pounding so hard I was certain he could hear it. 1,000 questions crowded my mind, colliding with flashes of memory, late-night conversations, laughter that felt stolen, a promise whispered into darkness. No, I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was denying. He shook his head slightly, as if to say I know. As if he'd expected my reaction. I never meant to disappear, he said, voice low. I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. Safe. The word struck something loose inside me. A memory flickered. An argument, raised voices, fear sharp and sudden. A night when everything had changed. I gripped the edge of the seat. You're talking like you know exactly who I am. I do. Then say it, I demanded, my voice trembling. Say my name. The car slowed to a stop. Not at my destination. Not at a light. Just stopped. Rain whispered against the roof as he turned around slowly, fully, his body angling toward me at last. The space between us felt impossibly small now, charged with years of absence and longing and pain. He looked at me the way one looks at something they've lost and found again. Reverent, aching, afraid to touch. I've been trying not to, he said softly. Because once I do, there's no going back. Tears burned behind my eyes, though I didn't know when they'd formed. I don't care, I said. I need to know. His gaze searched my face, as if committing it to memory all over again. Then, finally, he spoke. And the sound of my name in his voice shattered the last fragile wall holding my past at bay. I sucked in a breath, the memory crashing fully into place. The way he used to say it, the way it always sounded like more than just a word. Like a promise. Why? I whispered. Why now? Because I saw you get into my car, he said, pain flickering across his features, and I realized fate was giving me one chance to do what I should have done years ago. And what's that? To tell you the truth, he said. Before it's too late. My heart twisted painfully. Too late for what? Before he could answer, headlights flared in the distance, snapping the moment apart. He turned back to the road, pulling the car forward again. We're almost there, he said quietly. My destination loomed ahead, suddenly insignificant. I watched him, tears threatening to spill, my chest tight with emotions I'd buried long ago, love, anger, longing, fear. I still couldn't take my eyes off my driver. Because now I knew. This ride wasn't about where I was going. It was about everything we'd never finished.